So welcome to the Average Dad channel. Today, truss rod adjustment. So this is my old parts caster. Basically what it was an old Darling Divas guitar body, and I refinished it. So I stripped it all the way down to basically bare wood. And this is called a relic finish. Although it's not really relic in the sense that it's made to look worn, but yet it still has a glossy finish to it. So it's a relic look, but it's not actually a true relic. But it's nice. I mean, it has that worn look to it. The pick guard's been relic. This is an older style neck. So it kind of has that patina where it's aged. And then I also aged the bridge and saddles and the output jack. And the neck plate is relic to look, kind of beat up, and even the heads of the screws I relic. So the guitar, it looks like an old guitar, but it's just something I put together. I put all new electronics in it, new humbucker, single coils. Everything has pretty much been replaced, so it has a nice sound quality to it. But truss rod adjustment on electric guitars is very minute as far as relief. So what I'm going to show you here too, I'm going to put up some specification sheets and some illustrations here in a couple seconds just to show you what I'm talking about. But when we talk about relief, we're talking about underbow. So the neck has a concavity to it, a concavity, versus a convexity. This would be back bow or convexity. I mean, a lot of luthiers use these terms, relief or back bow or underbow, but I try to use concavity and convexity because I think it's a little bit more descriptive. So if your neck has concavity, then it has relief. And why do you want to have relief? Well, when you think about it, the strings vibrate very little near the saddles. So when you pluck a string, it vibrates very little bit, not much travel here. And near the nut, the string vibrates very little when you pluck the string, very little bit of vibration. But in the center, when you pluck the string has more room to travel. So a little bit of relief just gives the string a little bit more room to vibrate. Now, on an electric guitar, especially if you have higher action, I don't really think you need much relief at all because, if you have really low action, then you might need just a hair more relief to give that string just a little bit more room to vibrate. Now, on this parts guitar, the relief is about 0.3 millimeters, and I'm going to bring it down to 0.2 millimeters just for fun. And just to show you how it's adjusted. Another thing about this parts guitar is the truss rod adjustment is not in the neck. It's actually the older style, and it's underneath the pick guard in the bottom of the neck here. So I will have to take the neck off in order to adjust the truss rod. So let me give you a couple specifications to take a look at, and then I will show you how to adjust the truss rod. So this diagram, I think, is a good illustration of what we're talking about when we say relief. Relief is concavity to the neck of the guitar. As you can see in the first diagram, number 1, that there's actually what they also call underbow or upbow, but basically, to be more precise, there's concavity to the fretboard or to the neck. Convexity is the opposite. There's a hump, and that can cause fret buzz, as we know. So if you have a hump, then you're going to loosen the truss rod or turn the truss rod counterclockwise, to be more precise. If you have concavity and you want to take a little of the relief out, you're going to tighten the truss rod or turn it clockwise. So if the neck is almost straight, if you measure at the 7th or the 8th fret, then it would only have a very slight concavity. I don't know in instance you would ever want it to be convex. I believe you would never want that unless somebody else knows differently. But a slight concavity would probably be preferable, just to give the string a little bit more ability to vibrate in the center of the fretboard. But this gives you a good idea of what we're talking about. So let's look at standard specs for relief. So if you have an acoustic guitar, it varies depending on how hard you play the string, how heavy-handed you are with your right hand, the diameter of your string, how heavy the strings are. Sometimes they're a little bit thicker, they need a little bit more relief, and it's somewhat a matter of preference. So you do measure from the 7th or 8th fret. I think the 7th fret's probably the best. So acoustic varies from 1/64th of an inch to 1/32nd of an inch. So that would be in thousandths, about 16 thousandths or 31 thousandths. So if you want to make it, give yourself a little bit more room for a larger string, or being a little bit more heavy-handedness, you'd probably do a little bit more, give yourself a little bit more relief. For Fender's specifications are still measuring from the 7th fret. Depends on the neck radius. So if you have a more rounded neck, you need a little bit more relief. So on the Telly or the Strats from the 1950s, they had a 7¼ inch neck radius. So you need a little bit more relief with those, 12 thousandths or 3 millimeters. For the more modern Telecasters or Stratocasters, we're between 9½ to 12 inches of radius. So a little bit less, 10 thousandths or 25 millimeters. And then for the shred machines, what I like to call them, for really low action and really flat radius boards, 15 to 17 inches radius, you can go all the way down to 8 thousandths or 0.2 millimeters. So that kind of gives you an idea of the range of where you need to kind of look at relief or concavity. So relief is equal to concavity again. But it is somewhat a matter of preference, but you don't want to be so low that you start to have buzzing. And then also remember too, when you put the string tension back on the guitar, it'll probably add a little bit of relief depending on how old the neck is, especially on acoustics. With older acoustics, when you put them up to string tension, you're probably going to get a little bit more relief. So that's another interplay there that you have to kind of make an account for. So working on the truss rod adjustment again, and what I did was I measured the relief on the neck with this device. And this is a nice device because it's it allows you to actually put the straight edge right on the fretboard, not on the frets. Now you could do this just by measuring right on the frets too, but if there's a little bit of unevenness in the frets, then that will come into play. So it's kind of nice to have this tool, but you could do it with the fret, just with a straight edge, I mean. So I just put it right on the fretboard, and I was at about 0.00, I was at 0.25 millimeters, let's say 0.25 millimeters, and I actually, when I took the string tension off the neck, off the strings, the relief actually came out of the guitar a little bit. So the string tension itself is creating a little bit of concavity to my neck. So I'm actually thinking I might actually go flat on my neck and then just let the string tension put in the little bit of relief that I need. So let's see how that works out. Okay, now what's amazing here is that when I actually took all the string tension off my board, the relief is actually 0 at this point. So all the relief came out of the neck once I took the string tension off. So what I'm thinking that may mean is that the truss rod was just so loose that it wasn't giving any resistance to the string tension. And when I looked at the truss, when I kind of felt the truss rod, I always try to go counterclockwise, loosen it a little bit, just to make sure that it's not stuck or frozen in there in any way. I noticed that the truss rod was just basically loose. So I'm thinking if I put a little tension on the truss rod, that will kind of be a counterbalance to the string tension that I'm going to put on the guitar once I string it up. So what I'm going to try to do is just try to give it a little bit of tension. I'm just going to try to go loose and then just get to the point where it starts to have tension, and then I'm just going to go a half a turn. And there's still a lot of play in there. And right now, if you look at it, there's pretty much, let's see if there's any, the relief is almost nil. There's no light shining through between this tool and the fretboard. So I'm just going to give it just another quarter turn and leave it there. And I think the reason why I just had too much relief or so much relief is that there was just no counterbalance to the string tension. So I'm just going to go ahead and put the neck back on and get it back to tension and see if I have any relief at all at this point. So back again. So adjusting the truss rod, I came up with a startling revelation. You know how everywhere I read that you want to adjust a truss rod clockwise in order to take out relief or take out concavity. So I would tighten it if I want to reduce concavity, and I would loosen it if I want to add relief or let the neck become more concave. But what they don't tell you, because this neck has a truss rod adjustment that's at the bottom, it's actually the opposite. So when I am adjusting this neck, I have to think about it as if I were adjusting it from up here and think, okay, this is clockwise. So this would be taking out relief or adding concavity. So when I put the Allen wrench on the other side, I have to think about it as this, looking down the neck this way, this is clockwise and this is counterclockwise. But if you look at the neck, if you look down the neck this way, it would actually be clockwise, would actually look counterclockwise to you down here, and the opposite is true. So when you're thinking about it, look down the neck this way and think, okay, clockwise, which would actually be counterclockwise if you were looking at it this way, is actually going to tighten the truss rod. So looking down this way, clockwise is actually going to take relief out of the neck or reduce concavity. So that was an interesting revelation right there that I just figured out. So when I tighten this Allen wrench clockwise, looking down the neck clockwise, I've reduced the relief in my neck. But that would actually be, if I'm looking this way, it actually looked to be counterclockwise. So that's just a very important detail or fact that I was never able to ascertain by looking on the internet or doing research on the internet. But that tends to be what's happening here. So if anybody out there knows any different, let me know. But that's, I've seen some people on the internet talk about truss rod adjustment and talk about counterclockwise to tighten the truss rod. And people were saying, no, that's absolutely wrong. That's the opposite of what you should do. But this could be the case. If you're looking at it from this way, it would look counterclockwise, but actually you have to look at it this way, and then it's clockwise. So I think that's what where the confusion is on the internet, and why some people appeared to have it backwards. So if you're at the top of the neck here, it is clockwise and counterclockwise. If you're at the bottom of the neck, you have to have the same orientation. You have to look down the neck and say clockwise and counterclockwise, looking down the neck in order to have it match up. So I'm going to go ahead and put this neck. I took all the relief out. I have it, it's pretty much flat, and I'm going to see how much relief is just caused by the string tension. So I'm just going to go ahead and put this back together, get it up to tune, and I'll be right back. Okay, so I have the guitar back up to tension, and when I adjusted the truss rod, I actually had no relief in the neck whatsoever, or no concavity in the neck whatsoever. The neck was flat. But now that I've put it under string tension, my measurement is 0.25 millimeters on the seventh fret. Almost perfect. So you remember, if we look at Fender, 0.25 was kind of the middle position. If you have a 9.5 to a 12 neck radius, 0.25 was the right amount of relief. And you can see it's just about perfect now. So it was no relief without string tension. And then once I put the string tension on, I'm at 0.25 millimeters. So that's exactly where I want to be. Now, one thing to remember now is what I'm going to do now is kind of look at the action. And I'm going to just check the action and make sure the action is where it needs to be. But the action is not adjusted with the truss rod. The truss rod may take some relief out and might lower the action in the center of the neck, but it doesn't do anything for the action at the extreme ends of the fretboard. Action and truss rod adjustment should be separated from each other as far as when you're thinking about these things. So what you want to do is you want to get your amount of relief on your neck where you want it to be, and then once that's where it needs to be, then you adjust your action. And your action is adjusted with your nut and your saddles. So that's what I'm going to look at now. I know the action on my nut is perfect, and now that I just want to double check the action on my saddles, and I'll just do that with a gauge, and I'll just check the action in the center of the fretboard and make sure everything is still good. But so that's it. That's adjusting the truss rod. And any comments, please let me know about counterclockwise and clockwise on either end of the truss rod, either end of the nut as far as the truss rod goes. And if you feel so inclined, please like and subscribe.